2 weeks ago, I did the parable on the Good Samaritan, but several of you were gone to the camp out, and I thought, well, I didn't get everybody's comments on that, so I thought, well, I might just recap a little bit, and if anybody wants to interject anything that they knew differently about this parable, they sure can. But the parable of the Good Samaritan, Luke 10, if you want to turn there, we'll just read through that shortly there. Starting in verse 25. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he fell into the hands of robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going by down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed on by the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, took him into an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper, and said, 'Look after him, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you have made.' Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." Now, as we discussed before, Samaritans were not looked upon well by the Jews. They were considered half-breeds, basically. They just did not intermingle. They had really nothing to do with themselves. In further reading and studying on this, Jews had kind of a different outlook on things, family and everything. It was all just kind of one circle, as long as you were a Jew. But anything outside that, we don't have much to do with them. So as this teacher comes up to him, or I guess it would be basically probably an expert in the law. I don't know if he was a Pharisee or what, but he was one higher up, and he basically, you can tell by the way he's wording things, he's trying to catch him up. He's trying to put him on the spot. Let's see what you really know here. And he would have been fine if he would have just left it at what Jesus said. If he'd have just been satisfied with the answer. Because he got the answer that he wanted, right? He said, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus comes back and says, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" He answered him with a question. This guy is an expert in the law. He knows what the law is. And he says, "What do you read?" And the guy says, "Well, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly. Do this and you will live." End of story, right? If he had just walked away, he had the answer. But instead, he has to, as it says, justify himself. Who is my neighbor? And that's when Jesus starts the parable. Now, as we looked last time, a priest goes by, and as it says, going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed on the other side. Now, as it says, he was robbed, he was beaten, he was stripped of his clothes, he's on the side of the road. They don't know if he's alive or dead. He's left free. for dead. I think it says half dead. Okay, now a Jewish priest, what's the consequences of touching a dead body? You're unclean. And you're unclean for what? A couple hours? 7 days. Pretty major. Did he know he was dead? He didn't know he was dead. He may have looked dead, but did he have any concern? It's like, ooh, and divert the eyes, keep going. Yeah, blinders on. We want to see it, don't want to see it.
Know nothing.
Exactly. And we would think a priest, he would have known the laws, wouldn't he? Love thy neighbor as thyself. We don't know what this man was, whether he was a Jew or what, that was left for dead. But Jews shouldn't have any problem helping Jews, should they? Shouldn't at all. Levite goes by. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed on by on the other side. Once again, what were they thinking? He doesn't deserve mercy, compassion. He shouldn't have been on the road anyway. I mean, this road, I think they called it, what was it? The path of blood, I think, or something like that. But it basically, from Jerusalem to Jericho, it was rough country and lots of robbers. It was prime for hiding in the bushes and getting someone unsuspected. And there was lots of crime going on between that section there. Maybe they thought, well, you know, he wasn't carrying any sidearm or anything. He should have known better. He shouldn't have got caught. I don't know what was going through their mind, but they had no compassion, did they? They weren't really loving. They were thinking more of themselves. What if he was dead? Man, then I got to come up with burial expenses. What if he needs help? I don't have anything to help him with. It would cost me money. It's an inconvenience. I'm on a mission. I'm going to Jericho. I don't have time for this. Common phrase today. I don't have time for this. This is not in my schedule. That's what I use all the time. It's very easy. It's not what I planned today. Dan.
Well, the thing is, we have to remember back in those days, outside of the cities, there were no laws. There
Exactly.
was no one to enforce them. And it was common for robberies to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, I don't want to get involved. We have that with people today.
Exactly.
They don't want to get involved with anything going on to cause an interruption to their life.
Right.
And you see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was trying to think if it was Jill. You weren't here then, but it was some other time you had mentioned. Used to be when people were stranded on the road, common thing was to stop and see if they needed something. Do you need help changing a tire? And now they have taken that to the point where they're planning that.
Right.
So that you stop, wanting to give them help, and they end up robbing you. Or doing worse. In this case, I'm sure that there was lots of people that, you know, that were robbed, that were beaten, abused, whatever on this road, and no, there's not any constables making a regular route through there, you know. You're on your own. Either be tough or run fast. So these two that you would think would know the law, would know what needed to be done to have mercy and compassion, these two just basically walked on by. And then we have the Samaritan coming along. And the Samaritan, if by chance this was a Jew that was beaten on the side of the road, should he have anything to do with him? I mean, they hated each other. He shouldn't have had anything to do with him. He should have just blinders on. Yeah, you know, he got himself in his own problem. It's all up to him. He shouldn't have been out here. But what does he do? He stops. He has compassion on him. He sees he is in dire need of help. So what does he do? Throw a couple of coins, go on, be filled, walk on. Give him a pat on, oh, you'll be fine, it's okay. No, he goes out of his way. He's going along with a donkey. I don't know if he's riding it, if it's for hauling groceries back to town or whatever, but he's got a donkey. He stops. He has oil and wine. He dresses his wounds. He does whatever. I doubt if you're carrying a first aid kit with you. But more than likely, he's got a tunic on. He probably had to rip some of his clothing to make bandages. He sacrificed for someone that basically is his enemy. In any other circumstance, if that Jew was alive and well, he probably wouldn't have much good to say about that Samaritan. But this Samaritan, in showing his compassion, does everything that he can in his power to get this man to help. He puts him on his donkey, he bandages him, he uses oil and wine. That's not inexpensive. That's a pretty nice commodity to have. Puts him on the donkey and takes him to an inn and took care of him. Didn't say he just dropped him off at the front door, did it? He took him to the inn, he got him in, and he took care of him. He took time out of his schedule. And then, when he's cared for, he leaves, but what's he do? He tells the innkeeper, here's some money, take care of him, and when I come back, if anything else is owed, I'll pay you.
Sometimes we overlook the fact that an area, one of those is a day's labor.
Exactly.
So 2 of those is 2 days worth of work. So it wasn't just, here's 50 cents.
It wasn't just piddly. It's not just, throwing pocket change.
It was a good amount of money.
It was. It was something that had to be sacrificed for that. You had to really want to be doing this. It wasn't just, I think sometimes we have the attitude that we can just kind of pitch a little bit here and there and we've done our part. But this is taking it a little further, isn't it? This is putting everything we have into it. Are we willing to be like the Samaritan? Or is it easier? Of course it is. It's easier to just pass on by. Blinders on. See nothing, hear nothing. Don't do anything. It's easier. Is it the right thing to do? No. Huey.
One thing too is they beat him, robbed him, and stripped him, so he's probably naked.
Exactly. Right. And I'm sure this Samaritan clothed him with whatever he had. Like I say, it said he bandaged him. And I don't know of a lot of people that carry bandages with them all the time. So he had to take some of his clothes to clothe him, to take care of him. He gave a lot for someone that normally would basically spit at him. Now, what does that remind you of? What did Jesus do? How many people spit at him? How many people abused him, stripped him, beat him? Hardly anybody had compassion on him, did they? The whole crowd was in an uproar. Crucify him. Very few. Kind of amazing. 2 of them wanted nothing to do with him. Only one. And that one was the one that had been abused, that gave compassion on the other. Sometimes you kind of wonder, Jesus didn't come for the ones that were that were good. He came for the ones that needed help. Joe?
This was an unexpected occurrence. So sometimes you want to help somebody that you're going planned ahead,
Oh, yeah.
and that you made the time for them,
Mm-hmm.
and there are ones that you probably know,
Exactly.
fairly well, and
It's real easy to help someone you know, isn't it? Someone that's nice to be around. Oh, they fell on hard times. Oh, yeah, I'll go over there. I'll mow their lawn. I'll help them out, But what about the unexpected? The one that's on the corner, looking for a handout, and you're thinking, in your mind, you're thinking, that's another one of those that's just making money off of me. How do we know?
Jesus kind of, sorry.
Go ahead.
Jesus kind of stacked the deck here about somebody who should not have stopped. Samaritan, probably of the Jew, somebody's on a journey, using his resources that he had planned out for his journey.
Exactly.
So he had a lot more reasons not to stop. These guys who are coming down from Jerusalem are going home from their temple duties or from whatever
Yep.
they were doing in Jerusalem. And so their journey was much shorter. They were just going home literally.
Right.
So, things are much different. He was coming and already traveled from Samaria down through Jerusalem and was on his way to wherever, and stopped and took his time.
Yeah. And he was probably on like you say, not just a short journey, but probably a sizable journey because he had a donkey that was carrying stuff with him. So it wasn't just like a short little jaunt. It was, I've got this planned ahead of me. This is where I'm going. And then, oh, boy, he looks like he's in need. Janet and then June.
Put in this situation, same thing as this story. I was at a busy intersection in Boise, and there were a lot of cars, trying to get across. And this woman was in front of me, and suddenly she went down on the pavement. And she said, I think I broke my leg, and she was crying. And so I reached down, I wanted to cover her because she tried to get her clothes under her knee. And all of a sudden, I'm surrounded by these people in suits that are downtown. They're standing there jingling the coins in their pocket, just staring, and nobody would help me. And I said, can someone run across the street to the drugstore and call for an ambulance? And one man said, I'm not going to pay for that. And so I kept waiting. Finally, a woman came up and she said, can I help you? And I said, please run across and get an ambulance. Then she did, and she came back, and the lady on the ground said, who's going to take care of my cat? And so this lady said, give me your address and I'll go take care of your cat. Not one of those men helped. And then the cars started honking and people started yelling, get her out of the way, I've got to go to work. I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare. And then we stayed with her till the ambulance came, and people were really angry at us because we wouldn't drive it off the street.
Right.
I was so shocked at it.
It's an inconvenience. For some people like that, it's an inconvenience. Because it messed up their routine. It messed up their day. And they don't want that. And that's easy to do. Because we can get in our routine for the day. And every day, it goes along the same. And next thing you know, we don't like anything that messes that up. I mean, you get up in the morning, you get your cup of coffee, you read the paper, you turn the radio on or whatever. If that gets messed up, you don't get your first cup of coffee. Well, that just messed the whole thing up. It's the same thing that we can get into as Christians. The daily grind. We have to fight the world, we have to fight Satan, and we get so involved that we forget that there's people around us that need our help, that need our compassion and our mercy. And we sometimes kind of turn it back, well, how come nobody's helping me? I'm going through a tough time. Well, if your attitude was the other way, maybe there would be some coming your way. The Samaritan wouldn't expect anything from a Jew. That's why Jesus didn't use the Jew going by seeing the Samaritan on the road. Commonplace, Jew ain't going to do nothing for him. Why? He's a half-breed. We don't like him. We don't get along. But that's the reason Jesus used the Samaritan. Because he was showing this man that just needed to justify himself by asking that last question, who is my neighbor? June and then Hughie.
It indicates also that he was half dead.
Mhm.
So he was in a serious condition.
Absolutely.
It wasn't that he was just bloody and laying along the side of the road.
Right.
He was in a serious condition and could have died.
Could have been knocked out. He could have been unconscious. And that may be why the priest and the Levite thought, "Well, I'm not touching the dead body. I'd have to be home 7 days unclean. And that would really mess up my schedule. So let's just not bother with it. Hughie.
This also shows the Bible is geographically accurate, because it says he's going down from Jerusalem. Jerusalem is 2,550 feet above sea level.
Yep.
The Jordan Valley is 1,292 feet below sea level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a real
It's a steep climb.
climb.
Yep.
I think I
Yep.
read it was 18 miles. I don't know if I,
Yeah, I think it was like 15 or 18 miles.
yeah.
And it's in rough country. I mean, we're not talking like this is a paved bike path. It's not. It's rough country. There's rocks. There's paths in that, but there's lots of places for people to hide. And if they want to make a profit off somebody, they can just, we'll just pick on this guy. If we pull him off to the side of the road, beat him up, knock him out, take his money, we're on down the road. Dan and then Josh.
Well, I think keeping in mind that the question that was asked, who is my neighbor? We need to keep that in mind, because the Samaritan had no regard for who this person was. He's seen a person, he says he has compassion for that person, and he responded. And that's the example to us, because the end result is, who is your neighbor? Anyone in need, anyone at all.
Right.
And that's the lesson that Jesus is teaching at this point.
Right. And that's the thing that I think a lot of times I don't think we can say that we would pick out any nationality that, no, we don't want to help them. I don't think we would be that way. I think as Christians, we would help anyone of any nationality, of whatever race, if they were in need. But we are human. And we always have those thoughts in our mind that, like I say, the guy on the corner, is he truly in need? Or when he gathers 2 or 3 people's money from their car or whatever, then he goes over 2 blocks over and gets in a Mercedes and goes home.
It's on him.
It's one of those things that, do you get hardened when you see that, and then you think, all of them are like that? Why should I help them? I'm not driving a Mercedes. Josh and then Frank.
The question there, who is my neighbor, was asked. Jesus twists it in the response and said, who proved to be a neighbor?
Right.
Asking the question, who is my neighbor, makes what I do based on who somebody else is. Jesus twisted around and said, you do because of who you are.
Right.
And I was reading somebody commentary on this, said that love is a debt that we are always paying back. If you tie in Romans 13:8, it says, owe no man nothing except to love one another.
Right.
And that's the debt we're always working on.
Yeah.
And it paints people in a different picture when it's, I'm paying back a debt. And we see that great debt that we owe.
Exactly. What were we forgiven of? We were destitute. We were half dead. And he came along and gave us life. The opportunity for life. And he gave us a perfect example of how we should be. Compassionate, merciful. It didn't matter if they had leprosy, did it? He healed them. Didn't matter if they were bleeding for 25 years. He healed them. And the thing of it is, even here, he could have just blew this guy off. He already knew what he was going to ask. He knew what his whole intention was about. He could have blew him off saying, I don't have time for you. I really don't. I'm not going to waste my time with you because you're not going to listen. Same with all the Pharisees. When we looked at him, when he was teaching on the seashore, the parable of the sower and the soils and that, he knew there were some in the crowd that were not going to get it and never would. But yet, he still sets the example. He sets the bar for us. This is what you need to do. And can we argue with that? We can't. Because it's there. He tells us, this is what you need to do. Frank, did you have something?
Well, you covered it pretty well, but the compassion element that is there.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody's in need, our obligation as Christians should be to help them
Right.
as best we can.
Right.
You know, the other part to this, I think, sometimes we overlook. Jesus taught in a lot of his teachings, he answered a question with a question. If you've ever done a Bible study with somebody who doesn't, you know, if you ask them, well, what did you get from that verse, and allow them to voice it, then it's less like you telling them.
Right.
Where in this case, this lawyer, once he gave the answer,
Right.
nothing Christ could say was going to be wrong.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, he knew.
Yes.
He knew. He was a man of the law. He knew it. And Jesus asked him, well, you know, tell me.
Yeah.
Tell me what it is.
No,
And he did. And it was correct, wasn't it? Because Jesus says, do it and you'll live.
And most of the time people know.
Yes. Yes. But then he had to ask that one question. But who is my neighbor?
Just one more chance to trip you up.
Yeah, one more chance. One more chance, maybe, you know. Yep.
There's another thing, it says he was moved with compassion. A lot of people think compassion is feeling sorry for somebody. In this case, Jesus said the guy did more than felt sorry for him.
Right.
He poured wine and oil on him, which is expensive, plus put him on his own burden of animals,
Yep.
and then took him down.
Exactly.
And taken care of.
He sacrificed himself, what he had.
Compassion's not feeling good, it's doing
Right.
something for,
Right.
upon somebody who's in.
And that's like in Janet's case, you know, the men standing around, did they have compassion? I ain't paying for that. Get her out of here. You know, she's blocking traffic. Janet.
What really got me, and it's still to this day, is that I'm on the ground and I'm looking at legs, you're looking up, and the way these men were dressed, you could tell they were very successful.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll never forget the sound of the coins in their pocket as they were jingling and looking down. And I thought, at the time, has your arrogance and your riches that you have brought you to this shame. That's what really occurred to me, you know, as I looked at them.
And it's so common today. It's so common today because the world looks very good. Satan makes it look real good. There's lots of things in the world that Satan says, you know, this is not bad. You know, you can have this and more. Just don't care about the guy that's laying by the road. He'll take up too much of your time.
That's his problem.
Yeah, it's his problem. He got himself into it. He can get himself out of it. Dean.
Kind of piggyback on what Phoebe said, that compassion. You know, he says, you know, he talks about you love your Lord with whole heart, mind, soul. Okay, he says, but then you love your neighbor. You know, if you were in that position, what would you want that person to do for you?
Exactly.
And that's the compassion we have to have. You know, if you were there, what would you want done? How would you like that compassion on you? And if you were down there like that, you would want that.
Right. When we realize where we're at in our life without Christ, Aren't we just like him that's on the side of the road? We're lost. We're half dead. There's no hope. And if it wasn't for the compassion of Christ and God sending His Son, we would still be there. Because otherwise, what would there be? Nothing. There would be nothing. Roger.
So when he's telling this parable, you would think a Samaritan would be the last person to do that.
Oh, yeah.
A priest,
Mm-hmm.
and he's talking to the Jews, so I mean, it just shows that it's applicable to all.
Right. And that's the whole point I think that he was trying to make, is the fact that the one that you would think would have the least amount of compassion had the most, gave up the most. And like he says, which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert in the law replied, well, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise.
You wouldn't say Samaritan.
Exactly. It shut him up. He didn't ask any more questions, did he? He said, oh, that's it. Okay. Let's turn over to Romans 12 real quick. I got a couple of scriptures here I wanted to look at. Romans 12, starting at verse 17. We'll read through verse 21. It says, do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everybody. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Now, did it say, feed your friends? Feed your enemy. Give him a drink. That's going a little further, isn't it? James 1. This will be the final verse, and I'll turn it over to Dan here. James chapter 1, verse 22. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like a man who looks at his face in a mirror and after looking at himself goes away, immediately forgets what he looks like. Do what it says. I think that's a message for all of us.
That was our Bible camp theme last year, didn't do it.
Yep. We have the word. Don't just merely listen to it, do it. Because there's too many times that, yeah, we know what it says. We know what it says. But if we don't do it, what good is it knowing? We've convicted ourselves already.